Hi there, I'm AJ Fraser with the Center for Teaching and Learning at Cape Breton University. Here's 5 tips to consider when creating content for maximum online engagement. Tip number 1 is understanding your audience. So knowing who your primary audience is, who you're speaking to directly, is informative in the content creation, ideation, script writing phase. Are you creating material for your students in a lab setting, or is this years worth of research you're presenting to colleagues at a virtual conference? Are you communicating rather complex ideas to a layman audience? Understanding well who your target audience is key, and if done correctly, somebody from one of those groupings is going to feel like you're speaking directly to them. Which takes me to my second tip: use the best medium to connect with that audience. Ultimately, you're going to want to use the technology and formats you're most familiar and comfortable with, but acquiring more tools to put in your communication toolbox can only serve to make you a more effective science communicator. And what I mean by this is learning how to create video tutorials for short lectures or podcasts, blog posts are all ways that you can broadcast your ideas and work in an enriched way. So does your work involve colleagues and assistants that play a vital role in the research process? Maybe sitting down and recording some conversations or interviews and then uploading to Apple Podcast or Spotify is a way to give a more in-depth and personal perspective on your subject. Your audience can go for a drive, they can make dinner while they listen, which makes it even more accessible. Is your subject better explained with visuals? Then create a slideshow and do some voiceover. Is jargon or complex language getting in the way of a general audience understanding why your work is relevant? Well, maybe consider writing a blog post that complements your academic article. This can also help media interviewers when they're looking for background information before an interview. Third tip is to inject some personality into it. So whatever you do, make it personal. An audience is going to connect with an idea or concept easier if they know that you do too. It's a kind of a transfer of power. If you seem like you feel like something is important and your students think that your opinion is important, they're in turn more likely to think that thing is important. It's also much easier to relate content when there is a personal story, experience, or context to ground it in. Try to make it relatable. Tip number 4 is keep material engaging and bite-sized. That's why these videos are 3 minutes in length. Shorter isn't necessarily better, but if your material is dry or concept is very dense and difficult to wrap your head around, students are going to lose interest and focus if the content is too long. If you have the ability to segment a topic or chapter into individual ideas, fantastic. So that gives your audience the ability to consume your content in bite-sized chunks and allows them the flexibility to stop when they feel like they've taken all they can in. They'll be able to digest the material and revisit it if they need to. That makes it much easier to view smaller segments of information and feel as though you need to go back through and watch or listen to the entire thing. And my last tip is about analytics. So use data whenever possible. This is something very familiar to all scientists. Video hosting platforms like YouTube or Vimeo, podcast platforms like SoundCloud or Spotify, also most website hosting platforms like Squarespace, or even your learning management system like Moodle, they all have something in common. They have readable data that you can dive into and find when your audience or participants have accessed your content, from which devices or websites they found your material, and how long they've viewed something or whether or not they've shared it. So using analytics as a critical self-evaluation tool can help you in future content creation and dissemination. So that lets you know where you might have weaknesses or areas of improvement. So dig into the data. That's my 5 tips for creating enriching online content.